I'm so excited to announce that I've released the first official tarot diagnosis spread book. Tarot and Self-Discovery is a therapeutic tarot journey with over 200 spreads, including over 152 card prompts and over 50 robust tarot spreads. You can purchase a physical copy on Amazon or a digital copy at thetarotdiagnosis.com. You are listening to The Tarot Diagnosis. I'm your host, Shannon. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I also happen to have a love for tarot. Each episode, I invite you to reflect with me as I work to demystify the tarot and the human experience, all while exploring tarot's connection to mental and emotional health. While this podcast may feel therapeutic, it is not meant to take the place of psychotherapy. So grab your cards and join me as I work to create a pathway to better understand ourselves and those around us. I'm talking about spiritual bypassing today, and this is actually a topic that I've been wanting to explore for a little while now, and it's interesting because this topic was inspired by a conversation that I had with members of the symposium, the Tarot Diagnosis membership community, probably maybe like a month or so ago, and it was funny. We were actually kind of joking around about just using tarot and trying to, I think we even got on the topic of marketing, and someone had made a joke about going from, I can't remember the exact terms or the exact cards, but the cards that I'm going to be talking about today are the Ten of Swords and the Ace of Cups. So, we were having this conversation about, oh yeah, how do you go from the Ten of Swords to the Ace of Cups? And, we had a laugh about how that could be like a form of marketing to explore how you can use tarot as a way for self-reflection and personal healing. And we got a good laugh out of it because it's, a good image. But I sat with it for a while and I was like, there's something there. And I wasn't quite sure what it was. And then it just hit me. And I was like, oh, that's also like a form of spiritual bypassing, to think you can just, at the drop of a dime or snap of a finger, go from the experience of the Ten of Swords to the Ace of Cups. And I wanted to say you can't. Technically you can. It's not going to end well. And so today I was like, that's what I need to talk about. I need to talk about spiritual bypassing finally, and we're going to explore it through the lens of the Ten of Swords and the Ace of Cups. And I'm also going to pull a bunch of cards in between all that to dive deeper into this topic. So we all know that the Ten of Swords is this kind of like gut-wrenching image that often brings up a lot for the person who's pulled the card or the person who the card is being pulled for. We might have this visceral reaction because, the person in this card is laying face down under, dark skies with 10 swords pierced through their back. It's a card that represents true loss and the feeling of just being done. Like it's over, and it can feel really debilitating. I feel like it's more painful than even the Three of Swords. I know a lot of folks associate the Three of Swords as the ultimate heartbreak and pain card. And I think that still exists within the Three of Swords, absolutely. But there's something about the Ten of Swords feeling like the epitome of rock bottom, the epitome of the end. You have no choice now but to acknowledge that this part of your life or this experience or this part of you is now finished. And what are you going to do about it? And yet, opposite of this feeling is the Ace of Cups, this card that is just overflowing with positivity and love and nurturance and renewal and spirituality and emotional fulfillment, everything that a lot of us really want to feel in this world. And the juxtaposition between these two cards is heavy and glaring and a lot. And when it comes to the topic of spiritual bypassing, I think a lot of us want to just hop from the Ten of Swords to that Ace of Cups. and just immediately experience all the goodness that that archetype offers us. However, that brings with it a significant amount of potential damage, especially emotionally. So the term spiritual bypassing was actually coined by John Wellwood, who was a clinical psychologist and started to notice something happening in his own kind of world. He noticed there was something going on in his Buddhist practice or the Buddhist community that he was a part of. And he started to realize that there was an avoidance going on. And that's when he started to look into this more and realize, oh, I think this is a form of bypassing. And what he was experiencing and what he started noticing even about other folks was that there was this use of spiritual practices or spiritual beliefs that folks were using in order to avoid confronting or exploring emotional issues, especially unresolved trauma, unresolved pain, these kind of like inner wounds, or even what he referred to as unfinished developmental tasks. He also validated that this experience was, of course, one that was alluring because we were essentially shielding ourselves against the realities of our pain. But he also understood the importance of facing our pain and our discomfort and our even our shadow, if we want to go that direction, head on, because that's when true healing and true authenticity and true contentment, that's where that exists. As a therapist, I feel like I'm always on the lookout for this, even more so as a therapist who kind of straddles these two worlds of spirituality and psychology, because I am firmly planted at the intersection of psychology and spirituality, of mental health and tarot. And there's a lot of overlap that needs to be aware of in these two worlds. And there needs to be an awareness in ways that, we might engage in spiritual languages or spiritual practices that avoid or dismiss our pain and the experiences that we're having. And this can be difficult because the spiritual bypassing is often very subtle, and it can be masked as a form of enlightenment or even a sense of progress in someone's spiritual journey or mental health journey. So we have to be careful because we also don't want to dismiss or put down someone's spirituality or someone's progress, and ourselves too. We don't want to put ourselves down and think, oh, that's not progress, I'm spiritual bypassing, or yeah. So there's a fine line here between being able to discern, is this spiritual bypassing or am I just coping? And we're going to get into that in a little bit as well. I think a question that I kind of want to start off with that might help us understand this better is, what are we avoiding by focusing maybe solely on the positive? Because that's spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity can be quite similar. And I think that might be a more accessible way to explore if we are truly experiencing a form of enlightenment or personal growth or progress in our mental health journey, by asking ourselves, what is it that we might be avoiding if we are only focused on the positive or a potential positive outcome? And then asking ourselves, how does it feel to sit with our pain and discomfort without involving our spirituality or without involving our desire to say everything will be okay, or without the need to include some sort of overly positive platitude? I've been doing a lot of work on the shadow recently, and I've been also thinking about how shadow work feels like an inherent antidote to spiritual bypassing, because when we are purposefully acknowledging and exploring the parts of ourselves that often include pain or discomfort, we are giving ourselves permission to experience authenticity and authentic healing. And we know that we are absolutely not engaged in a form of spiritual bypassing when we are doing that. I just want to reiterate, I understand that it is so tempting to just jump from that initial pain and discomfort of the Ten of Swords into the emotional goodness of the Ace of Cups without having to trudge through the muddy path that we really need to in order to get there. And honestly, the majority of people around us also want us to make that leap from the Ten of Swords to the Ace of Cups, because so many folks are not only uncomfortable with their own pain and discomfort, but they're so uncomfortable with other people's pain and discomfort. But the reality here is we can't truly experience personal growth, personal well-being, personal healing, unless we move through the pain and we honor and acknowledge and tend to the wounds that are existing because of whatever happened in our Ten of Swords moment. And then we pave this way for ourselves to step into the Ace of Cups. Without that path into the Ace of Cups, through the murkiness, through honoring our wounds and tending to our pain, I almost feel like the Ace of Cups feels meaningless. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel authentic. And I think at the end of the day, when we engage in spiritual bypassing, we're ignoring, negating, dismissing our full complexity as a human. And we're dismissing our true, full human experience. And then we're robbing ourselves of our own personal story, our own narrative in this world. Okay, I feel like I've talked a lot about that so far. I really want to pull some cards and bring more of tarot into this. So let's pull some cards on what it might look like to maybe move through our pain and what it might look like to spiritually bypass it. Let's just pull some cards and see what comes up, and we'll explore. So if you are following along, grab a deck and pull with me. And then, of course, please reach out and let me know what cards you ended up pulling as well. So I ended up reaching for Tarot of the Abyss today. I felt called to use it. It felt appropriate to use something maybe a little more shadowy. Right, we have the King of Pentacles. The King of Pentacles feels very much like kind of where you end up, maybe once you've embraced the idea of moving through pain and moving through discomfort instead of bypassing it. I think the King of Pentacles is someone who has taken an active role in their own life and their experiences and is willing to share then how they got to where they are without sugarcoating it. Like, they're going to give you the nitty gritty. They're going to tell you exactly, all the detours they had to take in order to get to where they are. And they're probably holding this pentacle at the center of their chest as kind of like an emblem or a medal, so to speak, of their journey. This really makes me think about the value in acknowledgement. When the Ten of Swords shows up for us, it's either in a reading or we've kind of metaphorically experienced a Ten of Swords moment. It's giving us permission to stop and truly feel the weight of what's happening to us or around us. It means sitting with our grief, with our anger, with that pain and that sorrow without rushing to find a fix or a solution. And this is so powerful, because even as a therapist, I've seen how beneficial it can be to really just sit in our emotions and hold space for ourselves and hold space for other people. And embracing this Ten of Swords means embracing the idea that we can experience brutal pain and discomfort. And then the King of Pentacles shows us that it's possible to work through that. And I really appreciate the facial expression on this particular King of Pentacles, because it's not this, oh, hey, look what happens at the end. I'm all smiles. You can get through it. He looks like he's been through some shit. It's not, this isn't, oh my gosh, I had this victorious experience and look how amazing it could be when you do the work. Like he looks kind of tired, a little well worn, but there's an air of confidence to him and self-assuredness that I think is worth reflecting on. Because when we just move from the Ten of Swords to the Ace of Cups, we are denying ourselves the true experience of living. And this King of Pentacles, he's lived. He has seen some stuff. He has been through it. And yeah, I think that makes him just a more well-rounded person. There's also a sense of wisdom, because I think when we go from acknowledging to understanding, there's a sense of calmness that exists there, and just the personal knowing. And, in order to experience that, we do have to unpack these, layers of our experiences and pain. And I think some of the underlying questions we need to be asking ourselves is, what led to this painful event, and what might I do to move through it? And then what patterns or like behavioral patterns or beliefs have I adopted or embraced because of this? Which of those patterns and beliefs are healthy for my growth and help propel me forward? And which ones are unhealthy and keep me stuck? And this is actually where tarot can come in and be a useful tool, because if we were to even pull cards to those questions, we're going to be offered new insights and ideas that help us, piece together a clearer picture of what's happening and give us access to just our own thoughts and ideas that maybe we wouldn't have been able to access without the help of the archetypes of the tarot. Let's pull another card. All right, the Queen of Wands reversed. This is fascinating. So upright, the Queen of Wands feels very powerful, very sure of themselves, eager, passionate to create or explore. But reverse, there's a timid quality that exists. And that's what actually maybe feels more like bypassing, because there's a sense of giving up of personal autonomy and will. When we're engaged in spiritual bypassing, we are essentially giving up our own free will, our own power and control. And sure, there's so much that we cannot control in this world, and so much that we can't control regarding what happens to us. However, we absolutely can control how we respond to these things. Let's pull another card and see what we can explore in terms of another example of bypassing. Ooh, the Hanged Man. This is a good one. So my immediate thoughts are avoidance, because I feel like at its core, spiritual bypassing is a form of avoidance. But if we're looking at this through the lens of the Hanged Man, I think it's avoidance through very specific methods that are inherently good for us. Methods like meditation, yoga, listening to music, or thinking of ways to put a positive spin on a situation. And tools like meditation, yoga, and listening to music are fantastic ways to cope with stress and anxiety, especially related to a Ten of Swords experience. And we might want to focus, though, like on what's coming up when we're not meditating. Because if we're not focused on what's coming up when we're not meditating or doing yoga or listening to music, then we know that we're engaged in spiritual bypassing. And I think this is a prime example of needing to hold space for the truth of what's happening, and also hold space for the coping skills that help us to deal with the symptoms of the situation. So there's a duality that exists here. Sure, meditation and yoga, for example, are fantastic, and they help reduce stress. There's a significant amount of research that proves that. But we need to make sure that we're not using it as a means of avoidance. We should absolutely be self-soothing and coping using healthy tools, but we should also be confronting the pain in between those moments of coping. Let's go ahead and pull again. All right, the wise one, aka the Hierophant. So the Hierophant signifies conformity, tradition, a very structured belief system. So it's actually kind of funny that came up given the topic of spiritual bypassing. It could also represent rigid adherence, though, to these spiritual or religious doctrines that we often use to spiritually bypass situations, because we're wanting to avoid confronting our pain, avoid confronting the discomfort or whatever issue we're experiencing. And folks who engage in this type of spiritual bypassing tend to hide behind the teachings of their spiritual leaders. They might recite lines or texts or mantras from, sacred readings. And they're likely doing this without fully engaging with the pain that they're experiencing. Ideally, they would be engaged with their teachings if their teachings make them feel better, while also acknowledging and working through the pain and discomfort that they are relying on these words or teachings to help them with. But when we're not, this creates a barrier to genuine, authentic self-reflection and personal growth. Plus, the more we avoid and push away, the more the body holds on. So we think that we're doing something good by ignoring and trying to focus on the positive, or, really absorb, these spiritual texts that are supposed to make us feel better. But if we're not truly working through our pain, and instead we are just hiding or masking it with these, overly positive platitudes, the pain and the experiences that we're trying to avoid don't have anywhere to go. And they just get buried and they start to fester within us. And then eventually we have no capacity to hold space for it anymore. Like, our body literally cannot hold on to it anymore. And it emerges as heavier and larger pain and discomfort, and can manifest in a number of not so great ways. The Hierophant of spiritual bypassing can also represent a form of over-reliance, especially on spiritual rituals or symbols, in order to avoid pain. We might engage in rituals or grab a hold of spiritual trinkets, or just anything that is kind of external, that we believe is protecting us from this inner pain and turmoil. However, rituals can be incredibly grounding, and there's a significant amount of research that talks about this. And I'm a firm believer in the power of ritual for healing. But just like if we are using it like meditation or yoga to avoid, then essentially these tools that are supposed to help us just become distractions from true emotional processing. And like I said, this is very similar to the example of the Hanged Man and this over-reliance on maybe relaxation techniques like meditation or yoga in order to avoid. But we think, because we've been told that these are healthy forms of coping and we should engage in these in order to heal, that sometimes we're not even aware that we're spiritually bypassing, because, people who we trust and studies and research and science have told us that these are great things to do for our well-being. And I think at the end of the day, we just need to remember that there's a balance that exists here. We should be using these tools simultaneously as we are actively walking through and experiencing these Ten of Swords moments. Ultimately, in order to truly embody that energy of the Ace of Cups that, we all are seeking out, we need to acknowledge and integrate our pain, our discomfort, and the lessons that we are experiencing as we go through that pain and discomfort. Because ultimately, the Ten of Swords reshapes us. We could even look at the swords penetrating the human figure as this may be a little bit of a gruesome example, but literally carving out space for new growth to root and then blossom. So that gives us the ability then to emerge from this dark, painful place after we've tended to ourselves with deeper understanding and a deeper even capacity for the joy of the Ace of Cups. The Ace of Cups isn't about erasing things that have happened to us, but about creating something new from what's happened to us. Thank you so much for listening to the Tarot Diagnosis. For more tarot and mental health content, follow the Tarot Diagnosis on Instagram. You can also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and sign up to receive the Tarot Diagnosis emails, where you'll have access to exclusive spreads and exciting announcements. To join an incredible community of tarot and psychology enthusiasts, join the Tarot Diagnosis membership community, The Symposium, by visiting thetarotdiagnosis.com.